Good morning, one and all present here. My name is Saloni Walia. I am a third year PhD scholar from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at IIT Jammu, India. I am very grateful that my paper got selected at the 9th Kuala Lumpur International Conference on Social Science and Humanities. The title of my paper is The Importance of Education in Coetzee's novel Disgrace that came out in 1999. Some of the key words in the paper are education, sex, post-colonialism, and consent. For the abstract, I have used a quote from the book, and I quote, "For a man of his age, 52, divorced, he has, to his mind, solved the problem of sex rather well," unquote. These two lines actually sum up the entire novel. The main character of the novel is David Lurie, who is a professor of communications at Cape Town Technical University in South Africa. And this is the image taken from the cinematic adaptation of Disgrace that came out in 2008 to give a rough idea on how David Lurie must have looked like. So before discussing the main points of the research paper, I would like to discuss the backdrop against which the novel is set. So there has been racial segregation since 1920s in South Africa, which was formerly known as apartheid in 1948. Monarchy left South Africa in 1961, but still Afrikaners or the white minority ruled, which means that they were in power. South Africa finally attained independence in 1994. So the novel is set in the post-colonial, post-apartheid South Africa in the last decade of the 20th century. So as the novel begins, the crisis of humanities in academia is being discussed, which is a worldwide problem. We see that through the character of David Lurie, who is a professor of modern languages, but he has to teach communications, and that too in a scientific institution. And he's at a position, he is an adjunct professor, which is kind of a supplementary position. So we see clearly how humanities and social sciences professors are marginalized. We are also drawn towards the teacher-student relationship, which in this novel we can conclude that it needs remodeling. Lurie lacks enthusiasm in teaching his students due to the cold response that he gets from them. We see that his job is very mechanical in nature and monotonous because there is no sense of belonging. He has published 2 books, but they have not been received well by the literary circuit, so we see that there have been failed attempts at writing by him. We see that there is stagnation in humanities and social sciences. So it kind of calls for a reinvigoration. We also see that instructors generally in school, colleges, and universities are burdened with departmental or non-academic work, which hinders the main job of teaching, which is also the case in the novel. And we also see that when initial euphoria of joining academia subsides, the practical side of reality hits us, and we realize that we need a job to earn our bread and butter and to sustain a family. So after a point, one is happy to do the bare minimum of taking home whatever salary we are getting. So this is what Lurie has also restricted himself to, and for him this job is also, it has become very transactional in nature. As the novel progresses, it draws our attention towards the limitations of language, which is ironic, as Lurie is a professor of communication and should be adept at expressing himself, but that is clearly not the case. Language is one part of communication, but it also involves gestures or non-verbal communication, which language just cannot capture. So we see how language fails us. There is inadequacy of language. There is also a reference to Kafka, as he mentions in his biographical work, Letters to Milena, which is also used in the novel, that how Lurie is trying to communicate what is unsaid, in a way going beyond language. By referring to Derek Attridge, who is a South African academic, he sees language as an effective globalization. So for him, the novel represents South Africa on its way to becoming more Americanized as everything is quantifiable. There is use of less words, which is a plausible explanation, a possible explanation for uh, David's lack of expression. There is theme of race running parallel in the novel, and as we see, there is shift in power from the whites to the native population. There is an identity crisis, which is described that puts Afrikaners in jeopardy. The white South African writer Nadine Gordimer, in her 1959 essay Where Do the Whites Fit In, has also shared her concerns as a white writer that how they are sidelined or the works produced by them is sidelined, especially after the Black consciousness movement gained momentum in the 1960s. We also see that it can also be one of the reasons that Leary was not accepted wholeheartedly by his class, because there is a distancing between him being a white teacher, so him being othered by his black students, which is a major concern for the white teaching community. And we also see that the position of white intellectual is also at stake, which this novel also kind of breaks. The intersectional identities like race, gender also create hierarchy in academia, which is very evident in the novel. As the narrative progresses, the topic of sex education becomes important, and as our attention is brought towards it, there is reference of sexual misconduct on Leary's part in his sexual encounter with his black student, Melanie. Even more surprising is Leary's refusal to cooperate in the investigation and reluctance to defend himself. So there is a criticism of the methods of education in the novel or in South Africa, which is presented by the novel. We see that issues of consent also become important. We face the question that where actually is the consent located? There is no emphatic no from Melanie's side. Is she really aware that she might be manipulated? Consent also deals with figuring out for yourself what you really want and expressing it. So language becomes important, and it is important that how clarity is shown in approval or disapproval of anything. And also, what about the body language or the non-verbal gestures? Do they really count when consent comes into question? Or in the case of persons with disabilities, how will they express themselves? This is a question that we all must think on. Blurred boundaries are very evident at an institutional level when it concerns the student-teacher relationship or the man-woman relationship where gender or sex becomes important. Whereas if it comes to the white man or the black woman's relationship, then race becomes important. So all of these make the narrative very foggy. Melanie's passive participation and there is constant reference to her aversion, makes us ponder that can passivity be a form of expression, and if so, then how can it be read? Does Leary force her or ask for her permission? So in this respect, Laura Kipnis's book Unwanted Advances, Sexual Paranoia Comes to Campus 2017 is important. It is an American text, but it is important in the South African context. So on a conclusive note, we can say that this text is not an easy text to comprehend on the basis of language, narrativity, and characters. It offers a critique of the pedagogical practices at an institutional level. Thank you very much for showing patience and being so wonderful listeners. Thank you.